Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you here on this great day. I hope that you did have a wonderful Labor Day weekend. But, we're coming out of the Labor Day weekend, coming out of the holiday. It's cooler across the country, so it seems like fall is coming a little early for many of us. Not only that, now people are getting real active. You would think that 2026 was here already, but I guess in many respects it is. We're looking at a lot of things that will be of tremendous consequence to us as a country. We are now being faced with federal deployments of the National Guard, ICE, the FBI, federalization of our troops. And it's starting with Democratic cities, but don't think it's going to stop there, everybody. The Pentagon said the quiet part out loud, according to a report from the Washington Post, that the president is putting at the ready troops in all of the states so that when there is civil unrest, and civil unrest can be a protest, a demonstration, well, they will be deployed. Um, Basically, I guess I think ultimately to stop you from demonstrating. Think about that, everybody. Look at us beginning to lose access to the vote. Mail in voting is something that is conducted in at least 30 countries. At last count, about 34 countries, according to a Swedish study. 34 countries in the world do mail in voting. Um, Numerous states in the United States, 8 states in Washington, D.C., allow all elections to be conducted entirely by mail. California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, Vermont, and Washington State. I mean, this is not something that is unusual. This is something that has been normalized. You know, many people talk about the the graft in elections, uh, the fraud in elections. You are more likely to be struck by lightning than you are to commit election fraud. It just something is something that does not happen. Not to mention the fact that as we are looking at election fraud, well, we started seeing a lot of it when we went to a computer system. I never agreed with this computer driven voting. Because remember when when they used to do the Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, when you used to have the polling, just as soon as you walked out of the poll, they could, and these polls, I forget what they're called properly, they would accurately gauge how people voted. So you had a sense of who was going to win and where that was going to go. You know when that went south? You know when that stopped working? When you started getting computerized voting.
Mm.
Then they just threw that out. They said, we're not going to do that anymore. Now, your computers are so vulnerable to hacking all the time. Why would you trust it? I don't mind waiting a day or two to get an election result if it's a fair one. So, what are we talking about here? The people who were arrested and who were charged with voter fraud were Republicans. And I'm someone I don't play this partisan game because I think all these people are not being fair dealers with any of us. And so that's just where I am with this. So please spare me that. But for the record, the people who have been arrested for voter fraud have been the Republicans, and they have behaved outrageously. They have gone to pick up your votes. And, if you can't put in your vote, well, we'll put it in, and then they've changed the votes. Remember that happened down in North Carolina? Representative Reynolds, you cannot make this stuff up. But there's some people, when you go to church, you pray for the sick and shut in. Are you telling me that people who are sick and who are shut in, our elders, that you're going to make them go into a polling place? Really? Wait a minute. And they're going to have to go through a phalanx of police officers and ICE and the National Guard and the FBI. because they're being put all over the streets. Well, maybe that's what the FBI director, Kash Patel, was talking about when he said, I'm going to take everybody out of Washington and send them to all the 50 states. Maybe that's was the plan all along. But let's talk about this because as we're looking at voting, because I feel the walls closing in on us, Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds. And when you and your colleagues denied Republicans a quorum, I heard you, and we heard you all across the country, because you said, wait a minute, something is happening here. And it's happening in real time. And if we don't watch it, we are going to have a real problem. And the problem is here because now they're calling for redrawing maps all over the country as we're having the troops deployed all across the country. But now we're looking at the same time, and I don't think this is disconnected, Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, so you help me. Now you're going to have diminished access to the vote. So tell me, because I had Rodney Ellis on, your Harris County Commissioner, during COVID at the beginning of it, because that was a new experience for all of us when we were just locked in and we did not know what to do. And we were moving into an election season. And you in Houston, in Texas, you all, and particularly in Harris County, you really structured the system so that people really had access to the vote, maybe in a way that they had never had access before. You ensured that people could vote. Could you walk us through what you did? Because it seems that they are also unplugging that.
Absolutely, Santita. First of all, it's great to be back post Labor Day. I hope you had a great holiday.
Blessings to you and your beautiful family.
Yeah. So it was an extraordinary time. Obviously, COVID was something that we hadn't experienced anything like that in terms of the level of infectious disease that impacted millions of Americans. People were dying left and right. People with compromised immune systems were afraid to go out of their home, and rightfully so, because it was so contagious. And at this time, early on, we didn't have the vaccines. And even when we had the vaccines, it was still new. So the point is, we in Texas, particularly in Harris County, because of the emergency operations that kicked in for the Harris County Commissioners Court, which Commissioner Ellis is one of those, is led by a Democrat majority. They had a very innovative Harris County elections administrator who made it very accessible for people to vote. They allow people to use what we call at the time drive-through voting. They set up voting locations where people could literally drive their car, not have to exit their car, and be able to turn their ballots in and keep it moving. They were able to do that.
Hold on, because you were also able to get tested for COVID that way, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, okay. We had testing sites where people could get testing and get their status. They had mobile testing sites set up so that, you got to remember during this time, that was very frequent in terms of people testing positive. And so we wanted people who tested positive to be able to isolate so that they wouldn't be a super spreader. So we had those testing sites set up so that people could come in and get those tests. This was, again, before the rapid tests were very frequent for home use. So this was all before that. Obviously, people forget the frenzy that we were in. I mean, they had mobile morgues during this time. Remember, people were dying they couldn't even have funerals, right? So, I mean,
we forget, before you continue, I think we forget the state of emergency.
It was a crisis.
Which prompted you said, okay, this is a very, very challenging time.
Correct.
But we still ought to be able to vote. I mean, walk us through that.
Yeah. Like when you think about voting and you think about what voting represents, it represents a fundamental right that people have to exercise to decide who's going to represent their interests at the local, state, and national level. Voting is the bedrock of our democracy in America. It is what makes America the place that's unique from other countries that are ran by dictators that don't have a free and fair election. Now, we can talk about debate that with voter ID and voter suppression, but I mean, as a theoretical concept, we have a governing body that allows people to choose their elected officials. And so in Harris County, they were very creative and they were to adapt to this COVID crisis. And they set up different ways for people to vote. One, the mobile voting that I just talked to you about, the drive where people could actually drive up in their vehicle and they would be able to, without getting out of their car, they could do two things. One, they had they had a person there with a voting machine that the person could go up, pull up to and be able to vote that way, or they were able to turn their mail-in ballots and give it to a person that could receive it. So that was one. Two, they had 24-hour voting that they had set up so that people could vote during not from like 7 to 7. They had a couple of days of 24-hour voting. They had multiple days where the polls would be open from like 7 a.m. until midnight. Now this was all in Harris County so that there wouldn't be crowds of people, right? So that people would be able to go during off-peak times and feel more secure. And also we had a lot of first responders that were working around the clock during this time to be able to address the pandemic and the needs. First responders, whether it was police, fire, nurses, doctors, frontline people in grocery stores. They set it up so it would be more convenient for them. So these are all things that were set up in Harris County. Lo and behold, our voter turnout, it went exponentially up. It was like a record high, actually, because it was more convenient. Guess what, Santita? When I met you, one of the things that we were breaking quorum for back in 2021 was because they wanted to roll back all of the things that were done to help make voting more accessible. They basically created this voter restrictions. First of all, they ended souls to the poll Sunday voting.
Mm-hmm.
They ended and banned drive-through voting, even in a pandemic. So if we had another pandemic, they said, never again will you be able to do drive-through voting. Never. Never again will you be able to have 24-hour voting. Never again will you be able to have voting that extends for a period of more than like 10 hours in one day. So you won't have these long hours. Even if a county in a jurisdiction sets it up and funds it with no out-of-pocket extra cost to the state, if the county wanted to do it so they can increase voter turnout, they're forbidden for doing it. So these are all things that the state Republicans did so that Democrat counties or any county would be able to basically make voting more accessible. These were all part of the changes that were made after Harris County had that record voter turnout, even during the pandemic, because they made voting so convenient and effortless. So those are the things that they changed. Now, for example, in Harris County, we don't have same day voting. We don't have online voting because the Republicans don't want voting to increase or making voting more accessible in terms of registering. So you can't do ballot, you can't do online voter registration, although you can renew your driver's license online and it's safe and secure. They won't let people do that in Texas. Texas is one of the states that bans online voter registration, same day registration. And so the long and short of it is this, Santita. We saw that if people have more options and more accessibility when it comes to voting, they will typically use it, and the numbers go up. So we had what was scary for the Republicans. We had a very high turnout in urban Harris County, and Democrats, they did very well at the ballot box. Republicans didn't like that, and they rolled back those options. Although the Secretary of State could find no evidence of voter fraud that was occurred during these times of increased voter access. So
The
it was
justification for
there was the justification that they used was it's more opportunities for voter fraud, but they found none. So it was they didn't want to say we don't want to make voting more accessible because more people will vote and we'll lose. They didn't want to say that. So they said we believe that this is not secure, that this was done as a way to cheat and steal. Remember, this was the time that President Trump was making these bogus claims of voter fraud. These were Rudy Giuliani, where he got disbarred, where you had all these Republicans crying foul, but no evidence of it. And so this was doing that hysteria of Republicans claiming the Democrats stole the election by cheating. And again, no Secretary of State, there was no evidence of it. In fact, to the contrary, the only cases that I can recall of actually verifiable voter fraud was because of some various Republicans that had committed voter fraud by attempting to vote twice and things to that nature. So the bottom line is that when you allow more access to people, then you give them more opportunities to do what we believe is a fundamental right, a bedrock of a democracy, and allowing them more access to vote. They put the brakes on that, Santita, and that was something that we were so outraged with, and that was something that, based on the Voting Rights Act, the section that was gutted, where they would have had to get pre-clearance from these things. They no longer had to get pre-clearance for making from rolling back these protections when they gutted a key provision of the Voting Rights Act. So that was one of the reasons why we wanted the John Lewis Voting Rights Act to be implemented, and the Freedom to Vote Act. And I hate you don't have Daryl on, because Daryl and Barbara Arwine,
mhm.
through the Transformative Justice Coalition, I mean, they were boots on the ground. I met them in DC. I met them and I saw they were going and making a very relentless effort to pass that federal voting rights legislation that unfortunately didn't pass the Senate. And if that bill would have passed, we would have had uh, we would have had we would first of all, we would have had different outcomes in many of these states in the elections. We would have had likely higher voter turnout. We would have had less voter suppression. We would have had less racial gerrymandering. There's a whole lot of positives that would have happened if we would have been able to pass those federal voting protections. You wouldn't have these rogue states like Texas and Florida and Mississippi and Alabama and many of these southern states that have a history of racial discrimination from being able to continue to do that. So it's very disappointing that we were not able to get that legislation passed. I hope someday that it will. And my other criticism, you and I talked about this before, President Biden, when he had the ability to do it, just like Trump is doing things through executive order, President Biden failed to act. He failed to lean in and meet the moment. And so we had lost opportunities under President Biden where he was not as dominant and getting his agenda done as President Trump is. I mean, I may not agree with President Trump's policies, but I have to admire the man for pushing his conviction and wielding the power and using it. and using it. And President Biden, I mean, for all practical purposes, when it came to the Voting Rights Act and voting rights legislation, he didn't advance the ball. He basically, the ball stalled at the 50-yard line.
But where is that? We're talking with Texas.
Exactly. It's no good at all.
It's no good at all. We're talking with you. And in fact, I'd reached out to Attorney Darrell Jones. I'm hoping he'll join us today. But we can stay right here because and look at him. Here he is right here.
Oh,
Here's Attorney Darrell Jones. Here he is. See, look at you. There he is. See,
oh man, Darrell, I spoke of you, and there you are. You pop up, man.
Boom! I heard it.
Way to go, Brad. Santita,
It's that fraternal bond.
I'm telling you.
If I could just reset really quickly, Darrell was saying that one of the things that I was really most disappointed with President Biden was he didn't advance the John Lewis Voting Rights and the Freedom to Vote Act, and I really was so impressed with you and Barbara Arnwine and the Transformative Justice Coalition and the determination that you all were doing around the country to pass that. When we met in 2021, we broke quorum, and I was saying some of the problems that we've had in Texas and Florida and Mississippi and Louisiana and Alabama, if we would have passed the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, the Freedom to Vote Act, we wouldn't have had those same problems with racial gerrymandering in a lot of these elections that were lost. And so I just wanted to thank you and Barbara for being so amazing in terms of the way that you all were advocating on the Hill. That was one of my biggest disappointments with President Biden.
I'm not just disappointed. Let me tell you something. We needed that.
Yeah.
I'm not into begging you for what I expect you to do for me. See, because politics is quid pro quo. You do for me, I do for you. I do for you, you do for me. And that's just it. At the end of the day, we had LBJ, when he got into office, he looked around and he said, among other things, what is going on? Why has it taken almost 100 years for the voting rights of Black men and then Black women to be enacted? Something's going on here. We need a Voting Rights Act, but I can't do it alone. You all have to stay out in these streets and make that happen. We're in the streets. We got him elected. So for a transitional president who he knew he was going to be there, he said he was only going to be there 4 years, make it happen. Mm-hmm. That was something Gerald Griggs called for, the president of the
That's right. I remember, yeah. He did.
And people gave him all kinds of grief. He said, I'm just asking you to make it happen. I am tired of begging for what I need when you expect me to give you your vote. Mm-hmm. See, because the problem is now this is the problem. Now we have a real problem, because now we're trying to get the vote, Darrell, Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds. And this is the backdrop. Now we have got ICE, the FBI, the National Guard, and a federalized police force who are standing and hovering over us while we want to get out in these streets and demonstrate. And those demonstrations are coming. They already know they're coming. These people understand. They study people, and they understand the patterns. They know that when these cuts hit to Medicare, Medicaid, WIC, SNAP, and everything else, when the social safety net that it has taken almost 100 years for us to put in place, they know that now that has been shredded, they know that Americans are going to be in the streets, and they're going to put saboteurs in our marches so that they can be violent, and then they can really clamp down on us. Mm-hmm. If you want to save the vote, if you want to have a vote that is non-fraudulent, then get off of these computers, which are eminently hackable. Mm-hmm. Exit polls, that's what they were called, Representative Reynolds. Yeah. Exit polls used to be almost a fail-safe. They were just foolproof. You could find out how people voted, because they were like, I voted now, I'll tell you. But when they stopped being foolproof? When we went to machine voting. Check the record. That's what happened. Then they said, we're not going to do any more exit polls. They're not going to check the machines. They don't want to talk to the people anymore. We start thinking, everybody. Let's start thinking, people. Because
And you know,
now,
Santita, that's one of the reasons why when
help
we
me,
go
because
around talking,
mail-in voting is what they do all over the country. They in
absolutely.
34 countries around the world, they do this. We pray for the sick and shut in when we go to church, Daryl.
Hmm.
Talk to me. What are we supposed to
Right.
do now?
But you're absolutely right. You know, one of the things that we tell people constantly when it comes to voting, that when you go to vote, if they give you the choice between the electronic ballot or the
Mhm.
one where you just fill in with the pencil, use the pencil. Fill it in with the pencil because you are creating a record that's going to be there. Then people can go back and look at it. The more electronic things that you depend on, the greater the possibility that it can be interfered with, that it can be
That's
hacked, that
right.
it can be manipulated. So you want to do as much by hand as you can. You know, if you can go back to the little bubble with the number 2 pencil, go back to it. You know, that is the most concise way of knowing, precise way of knowing how people have voted, and the record remains in place. You're not relying on anything that's hackable at that point. That's extremely, extremely important. But I tell you, you know, I certainly share with Representative Reynolds, you know, that had President Biden, you know, certainly signed the Freedom to Vote Act and the acts that we were pushing for back then, we wouldn't be standing where we stand today with all of these issues. They wouldn't be there. The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act would have cured all that stuff dealing with the redistricting and all the gerrymandering. All that would have been cured. It would have been the same across the nation, so that there wouldn't be all of the playmanship that goes on with this, and the political playing that goes on with it. So, you know, all of those pieces would have been in place. So it's disappointing that it didn't happen. But where we are now, this is what I warn people about. Folks are talking about, you know, obviously the potential of the National Guard coming into Baltimore, coming into Chicago. They're in D.C. They've been in L.A. What I caution people about with the vote, and that is this: look for ICE, National Guard, federal policing agencies to be around the polling places to intimidate people from wanting to go in to vote.
How would that work?
Particularly, you know, some of our Black brothers and sisters and our Latino brothers and sisters. You know,
But no,
look
how
for
would that
them to
work?
be there to intimidate them.
Who might be intimidated? People with a record or what? I mean, what? Talk to me.
Well, you got to remember, you know, people with a record, people that may be on probation, not certain if they can do it, people that are just not comfortable being around police, right? There are people that don't want to be around police agencies. There are people that might be on probation and concerned, well, I might have a warrant. They're not going to want to exercise that right to vote. You're going to have people, you're going to have many of our immigrant brothers and sisters, right? Because you're going to have people that are going to be gathered up. And you have people now that are being gathered up for deportation and being held, and they're American citizens, or they're validly in the United States. If you have ICE and folks that are around the polling places, what's to stop them from doing that there? What's to stop them from going for members of their family, or people that may come with them? They're going to be, you know, there's nothing to stop ICE and nothing to stop you know, Homeland Security from asking them for their immigration status, right? Can you prove that you're an American? All of this goes along with intimidation. That's intimidation at the ballot box. What we, you know, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, it would have abolished all of that. But that didn't pass. That's not where we are. That ain't going to pass before this election that's coming up. And so what we're going to be facing are a lot of intimidation tactics that are going to be legal intimidation tactics that's coming from the administration. It's coming from the top down to try to suppress people from going out to vote. If they can create carnage, if they can create uncertainty, if they can create people feeling nervous and concerned about their safety going to vote, they're going to dissuade people from going out and casting their ballots, which is what ultimately they want to do, Santita. That's the concern.
What my concern in it is compounded because
Mm-hmm.
what Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds went over, he just reminded us of what Commissioner Ellis and he and others did to make voting accessible at the height of
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic. And
Right.
they were real, they became like the model county,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
It's
know.
wonderful.
And now we have another layer. We have many other layers now that have been strengthened, and I think we need to be very, very mindful, not frightened, but mindful and careful. You now have, as you asserted, ICE, FBI, other intelligence agencies, federalized forces. They're not going to stop in the blue cities. Everybody, it's going everywhere because guess what? If you just look at these meetings, these public meetings with these public officials, with the congresspersons, you see where the anger is, and it's not going to do anything but increase. Daryl,
Mm-hmm.
Ron, that's what's going to happen. And so, and I just see it I see it growing. So my question is, um, what do we do with? I mean, what would you recommend that we do to push back? Because also, for example, we need to have a real voter registration push in Texas. You almost have 1 million people there who are not registered to vote. I mean, I'm saying there's real work that we need to do to keep the republic alive. I'm not talking about democracy. That's a form of governance. I'm talking about the foundation of our government. Foundationally, we are a republic that has democratic elements. Okay. So I'm trying to figure out how, because I'm feeling the walls closing in. I got the police. I'm here in Chicago. I got the police coming. And we're a city that correctly has had a consent decree because we have Homan Square. That was basically a black site, a Chicago police black site that was modeled on CIA black sites, where a lot of black and brown people got disappeared, or they came back home not quite the same people. Something awful happened to them there, and we just keep on going with this. I mean, Daryl, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to register voters? How are we supposed to vote if they're going to eliminate? If they're going to cut off? They've already shut down the drop boxes in many places. I mean, Daryl, what do we need right now?
Well, there are a couple things we need right now. One of the biggest things we need right now is for people to start the process of voting, of registering to vote, and checking their status once they are registered. Because one of the things that we're seeing and have seen in the past is that they periodically will remove people from the rolls. They'll purge the rolls. And so, and you may not even receive the notice that you're being purged from the rolls. They may send some little flimsy looking postcard, right? That you'll just ignore, thinking that, yeah, I'm not going to take this vacation or whatever it is. It doesn't apply to me. I've been voting at the same place for 40, 50 years. It doesn't apply to me. And you don't respond to it. And their tactic is, once you don't respond, that then they have the ability to put you in the purge file and have you purged and removed from the rolls. We saw that happen in Florida when we were down in Jacksonville during the last election. They had prepared, I call it the waiting room, right? Purgatory, if you will. They had taken the steps to take some 80, 90,000 voters, primarily African-American and Latino, in northern Florida, and they put them in the bin to be purged, meaning that if they did not respond, they were going to be removed from the rolls. And if they didn't vote that particular election, they were going to be removed from the rolls. They had no idea they were in the waiting room to be purged. No idea. No reason. That nothing was sent to them. Nothing was done. These are the type of tactics that are taken, that are done to try to suppress voters, particularly voters of color, from activating their votes. In Florida, they don't have same-day voter registration. So once you're purged, you wouldn't be able to cure it by just going there and registering and voting at the same time. That wouldn't have happened. So, those are the type of tactics that are there. But what we've got to do is we've got to be certain that we're in the process of registering voters. And once we register them, we've got to take the steps to be certain that they are actively involved in getting out to vote. So it's one thing to register, it's another thing to actually vote. And we've got to do both of those to be certain that people know what's going on. So that's a huge part of what we need to do, Santita, at this point in time. And we just really have to be vigilant with regards to what's happening. Because, also, Florida just has so much stuff going on with the vote, as does other states. But we've got to watch them, and we got to call it out and be certain that people are aware that they have to constantly do. What did it say? Every 6 months you're supposed to check your batteries, stuff in your smoke detector. Well, when you do that, also check your voter registration stats. Just put it all together, check it all at the same time. There's got to be regular checks that are done.
Well, how do you do that? How do you check your status, whether you're registered, if you've been purged from the rolls or not?
Absolutely. You can check your voter registration status by going to vote.org, and it will break it all down to you. You'll put your information in. It'll even show you if your voting location has been moved, because there's some states, Arizona, that move polling places regularly so that people don't necessarily know where they're going to vote, right? And it's done to create confusion. That's the reason that it's done. And speaking of creating confusion, the executive order that you heard President Trump signing that's tried to stop vote by mail, let's be clear. Vote by mail and how elections are carried out are state functions. Right? It's not the executive function. The president does not have the power to do that. So why does he do it, do you ask? Why would he do such a thing if he doesn't have the power to do it? Creating confusion. That's precisely what it does. It has people believing that they can't vote by mail, that the only way they can vote is that they've got to show up in person on election day to be able to vote. Those are all the pieces that we've got to overcome with information to the public, Santita, so folks know what they need to do and what their rights are with regards to how they can vote, planning their vote, and then voting the plan that they've put in place.
We're talking with Attorney Darrell Jones, chairman of the Transformative Justice Coalition. Of course, we host a radio show. You've got to hear it. You've got to participate in it with Attorney Barbara Arnwine every Tuesday, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, WOL, Washington, D.C., WOLDC. And of course, Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, who has now gotten back to Texas safely. Thank God, but we've got work to do. And we've got work to do. And I keep going back to I keep looking at the backdrop, but I think it's very important. Now we're beginning to see what's happening in Washington because Washington's a test case, right? We're seeing there was a Therese Riley, a young man from Maryland, one of your fellow Marylanders, who had a crossbody bag. The FBI agents thought that it looked to be too heavy. They put him in jail for a week. A week. The judge even said, this is absurd. You can't just wrongly imprison someone and then say, my bad. That's the judge's words. You now have, I'm wondering how much space we have to demonstrate, because you get put in Facebook jail. They suppress your algorithms. Mm-hmm. I feel the walls closing in on us. Now, I don't feel hopeless, but I certainly want to ring the bell so that people understand what we're dealing with. I will see, X number of people who are watching. Then I'll go back and review who have watched the show over the course of a weekend. It might be 1 million, 2 million people. But they jammed the algorithm. This is what they're doing. And it is in this context that it is now harder for you to have your say, particularly as we're coming into November of 2026. Because as I go to the grocery store, I spend $100 and I've bought no protein. I'm just buying staples. I looked up, a jar of mayonnaise was $11.50. Because I don't want to get a small jar, I want to get a big one. Because I get more of my money that way. My point is, what are we supposed to do? Because I think that I'm trying to take the 30,000 foot view, if you will. Because I see just everything is happening at one time, and I don't think it's disconnected, Representative Reynolds and Attorney Jones. And so my question for you is, what do we do? What do you do? Because I'm thinking you have to go to these churches, both of you do, to tell folks what they need to do if they're approached by any of these law enforcement officers.
Mhm.
I mean, what do you do? And if you're going to vote and someone aggressively asks you, are you in the right place? Or if they just say that, that can frighten you. I mean, what are our rights right now? Help me. Either of you. Well, I'll start with you, Representative Reynolds. I know you hear this from your constituents, or you know what, or maybe you won't hear it until election day or until you're faced with it. And I'm saying I think we need to prepare people, but before, because we're on tenterhooks here in Chicago, because you got the president talking about sending these people here. I have the governor and the mayor of Chicago every day holding a press conference because they are trying to get ready. And guess what? And Chicago's getting ready too. Chicago winds are getting ready. How about that part? So I mean, so what do you see? Because do you? I mean, because it seems like the walls are closing in on us, Representative Reynolds. It doesn't frighten me, but I think
No, but people need to be alert and aware of their rights. One of the things that I always like to push is having voter protection attorneys around and having monitors around so that people can watch and understand their rights. We've worked diligently with organizations, like the Transformative Justice Coalition that works in collaboration with other LDF, NACP, Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights, to make sure that we have people in place to report these any irregularities. I know that Daryl and Barbara. I mean, I'm not just saying this because it's there. They've been on the front line in this country, and I don't ever want to say and take that lightly because they have been the vanguard and
yes,
and
they
and
have.
pushing and weeding out voter suppression. Because Daryl is right what he told you. These things that they're doing, it's not an accident. It is by design. It is by design that, like for in Texas, you had these Proud Boys at the polling places. That wasn't. They weren't there to give people a high five and say, "Hey, thanks for coming voting." They were there to as a deterrent to scare people. Having these
And many of them are police. Many of
well,
them are
yeah,
law
exactly.
enforcement.
Yeah. They're there. They're there in an effort to intimidate people, and we've seen that, Santita. We've had to uh, report these things that were happening. Even, for example, they had text messages going out like, "Oh, um, when you go to vote, they're going to check and see if you have a warrant." That's not true, but they were doing that because they were trying to scare people.
Mhm.
Or, they're going to be checking to see if you're a citizen or this or that. I mean, they do these things because their whole purpose is to scare people to stay home, to make people think twice about voting, to make people question whether or not they are going to get in some kind of trouble for exercising their right to vote. And so this is if they do that by 0.5%, 1%, it can make a difference in a very close election. And so that is what they do, Santiza. This is a tactic. This is a tactic that has been used. And in Texas, we have basically allowed vigilantes to be there as monitors because they want this type of behavior. And so we have to stand up and we have to be have our own monitors, that we have to have our own watch guard. So people see, just like you have a right to be there, I have a right to be there. And when you come vote in the hood, I want some familiar faces there. Then they know if you going in the hood and you seeing a whole bunch of white guys in, whatever kind of regalia, you know that there are going to be some concerns quite naturally. But if they see at the same time you got some other black faces that are familiar, then that will give some comfort. So we have to be able to, have systems in place so we understand the rules of engagement, and we are on guard and ready to respond. Rapid response. Having constitutional lawyers on standby to be able to call the elections administrator. Oftentimes, this is in real time. We've had to get the elections administrator to stop some of these shenanigans that were taking place. People coming within, the buffer zone where you can't even approach people, so that they're trying to intimidate them. We've had to do that. So it's a village approach. Santita, is what we have to do. Voter registration, absolutely. That's part of it. Voter mobilization, absolutely. But also on election time, making sure that we have those monitors of our own who are at the polls, who are bird's eye watching and reporting, so that if they see something, they say something, and our people are protected. And that's one of the things that I would say we have to continue to do, especially in this heightened attempts by Trump and his MAGA extremists to intimidate minority voters from voting.
Right.
But you know what? Let's be clear. This goes beyond MAGA.
Yeah.
Because we keep talking about his base. He doesn't have a base. He has a wide swath of support. And that is real. When the corporate media use base, it sounds smaller than it is. It's actually larger than what we say, because as unpopular as his policies are, he does executive orders because he can't get them through Congress.
Right.
The Republicans need too many carve-outs, because when they go home to these town hall meetings, you hear how angry their constituents are. But he has some strength here, and it goes beyond MAGA. People are madder because there was no money before he got here. That's why they were looking between him and Bernie. They were looking at a socialist and a capitalist. They said, somebody do something. Come on now, let's just keep it 100, because it goes beyond him. It really does. You need to be looking at J.D. Vance, who was brought to us by Peter Thiel. Because these people are monitoring us all day, every day. And when you want to speak up for peace and for issues that mean something to us, you get put in Facebook jail. You get banned. They tell you that you're saying something that is unacceptable on this platform. Oh, wow. So we gotta, this is big. This is so big. And if you listen to Washington Journal in the morning on C-SPAN, because they have a line for Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. Oh, be clear, he's got a lot of support out here. Now, that's why I have different people on the show, so you can hear. They're sitting right by you, and they're your family. I'm sorry, Daryl, please.
And Cynthia, there's another level, there's another layer to this that exists that most people are unaware of. And Representative Reynolds is about to experience it in Texas. That layer is this. One of the things that we count on when people have affronted our right to vote, right, is we can take it to the court, right, and we can get things reversed and get it corrected. Well, what has happened, what's coming out of what's called the Eighth Judicial Circuit, has been these cases that have been an affront on the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And what this case that's currently pending, really, certiorari to the U.S. Supreme Court says is this, that only Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice can bring violations of Section 2 to the courts. What does that mean? That means that the NAACP, it means the Transformative Justice Coalition, it means the ACLU, all these organizations that bring violations of voting rights before the courts, none of them would be able to do that. Only the office of a U.S. attorney would be able to do it. And if they don't want to do it, if the U.S. attorney decides they don't mind what's going on, let me use a real quick example. In Missouri, there was pending a case where someone hung a noose at one of the polling places to intimidate some of the black voters, saying, do you really want to vote, as sort of the message, that would ordinarily be a violation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. But what is happening, if this case is called Turtle Mountain, if the Turtle Mountain case goes through, it means that only person that could bring that violation to the courts would be Attorney General Pam Bondi, who was the Trump appointee, who really ran through Florida with a bunch of violations of voting rights stuff that was down there. That's going to be the other layer that's going to be there. You know, Representative Reynolds in Texas, with what they're going on with their gerrymandering, the courts have already decided. They've already decided, the federal courts have decided that if the gerrymandering is based on partisan politics, the federal courts are closing the door. We don't even want to hear it. The only way that they will be able to step into a federal courtroom on that type of violation is if they can show that it's exclusively race related. This is just incredible. So the layers and our ability to begin to fight back, it's at issue with this Turtle Mountain case. And folks have got to understand and appreciate what's going on. This is the fight that we're in right now. As we speak, we're in this fight. So, Santita,
Well, you know,
I just want people to understand that this is going on. And let me just say this, and because you know, I forget things quickly these days. So let me just say this, right? Turtle Mountain case, right? It has gone beyond the issue of race. It now also includes Section 208, which deals with people with disabilities, meaning does a person who is bedridden, does a person that's bound to the wheelchair, can't walk, do they have to provide that person a ramp to get to the voting machine? Do they have to provide ballots in the language of the people, but might be almost a majority of people that are in a voting area? Do they have to have ballot questions that are in that person's language? Right now, Missouri is saying no, that they don't. And this is all what's going up to the Supreme Court. So we've got to be aware that this is happening, because this is the other front that's there. They're taking away an avenue. They're trying to take away the avenue for us to fight for our voting rights. But people have got to be aware of it, Santita.
Well, they do have to be aware of it. And we have to talk about it now, because when we get up on the election itself, and it's 18 months away, less than, it's a year away. You have to condition people, not brainwash them, but help them to understand, hey, this is the fight, and this is where it is right now. Because everything's going to change when they deploy more troops across the country and people take in that vision. It's going to frighten a lot of people. It's going to deter a lot of people from going out in the streets themselves. I mean, there are a lot of moving parts here. And I think that we have got to be mindful of that and talk about it as much as we can, because we're telling people that they need to get out here and vote while you're surrounded by all of the alphabet agencies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that does not make people feel comfortable, because quite frankly, people don't tell you everything. A lot of people have troublesome records that could make them be very anxious about being around law enforcement. And let me tell you, I'm not judging you. I'm not at all. I think that people need to be left alone. You pay your debt to society or whatever it is. Come on. What about Florida? I mean, people who they were granted, they were reinstated. They had their voting rights reinstated. Then you had a Republican legislature that went and took that back. What do they do? Because to me, I would think that many of them are in limbo, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There was more than 1 million people that impacted. So my question for you all, I mean, these last few minutes here, I only have like 2 or 3 minutes. What is the path forward? Because we're looking at these, like I said, you got Mr. Riley in Maryland. He was just walking and he's got a newborn. His wife is like, all this is on me, and this is a lot. You've got people who are being charged with felonies, and they're misdemeanors on the books.
Mm-hmm.
Help me to understand. Let me start with you, Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds. Where do you need for us to go? What should we be doing now because we're watching, because we need our vote. So is that controlled on the local, county, or state level?
So there are multiple layers. Ultimately, the vote is, in terms of each state, is heavily regulated by state and federal law, and so there are certain things that federally a state can't overreach and do. There are minimum protections, but a state can set higher standards. They just can't set lower standards. And so the point I'm making is that it's so important that people, and this again, it goes back. We just did, well, not just did, but Texas did, and other states are looking at now redistricting. You would think that redistricting is something, especially if you're reapportioning for federal seats in Congress, you would think that that would happen at the federal level. It doesn't. It happens at the state level. The state legislatures control the redistricting for the federal level and the state level. So in essence, they hold an enormous amount of power in deciding how federal lines are drawn so that there is adequate representation in communities of interest and communities of color, and based on a lot of the erosion of the Voting Rights Act that's been really weakened. So what people can do is stop sitting out in these state races.
Mm.
Stop sitting at home when you have an election that you think is not very important, that is very significant for a state representative or a state senator. Then you drill down at the county level. Not too often do we talk about county commissioners who basically work as a governing structure for the county to determine where polling locations are located within a county. In Harris County in Texas, the commissioners vote to determine what areas polling locations are set up. And so it is so important that we vote in these county local races where people oftentimes don't even know who their county commissioner is.
Mhm.
And so that is why it's so important, Santita, that we really understand that it's not just about president or vice president or United States senator. It's really the closest elections to people in terms of their day-to-day lives is the most local, fundamental, basic city council member, county commissioner. That's where the rubber meets the road. And so my message is, please, ma'am, please, sir, get involved in your local community where you live. That is just as important as what happens at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, where the White House is located. What happens in your backyard with your respective county commissioner. Those are the people that you have a more ability to hold them accountable and to get rid of them. Many of these positions don't have term limits, but every election is a term limit. So I hope that if I'd rather be redundant, and I'm gonna say it again, all politics is local. People
Mhm.
register and vote in these local elections, and then hold us, your local elected officials, accountable, or else you have the power to fire them and hire someone else that will be responsive to you and for you. So that is really my message, is that to be engaged in your own backyard, and then you can get so much done if you participate at the local level.
The last minute belongs to you, Attorney Darrell Jones, WOLDC, every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time.
Thank you, Santita. And Representative Reynolds could not have been more on point. And I just wanted to drill it home just a little bit more, just to make it a little more real. People focus on this presidential election and this U.S. senatorial election. It's the school board, right? Your local school board that will decide what the curriculum looks like in the school where your children, your grandchildren, and other people's kids are taught. Whether your history, whether the books that teach your history go into the schools are determined by the school board. So when we start looking at these elections, it's not just the top that we need to be concerned about. We got to be concerned all the way down, because all of those are the decisions that are being made. Most importantly, we've got to be certain that we're also protecting our right to vote, because that is truly, truly at issue. I encourage everyone to just Google the Turtle Mountain case and just read the articles that are there, because that's going to be one of the biggest battles that we're going to be facing this year. This year. And that's going to be determining whether or not the courts are going to be able to aid us in fighting to protect our rights to vote. Also pay attention, Santita, to the SAVE Act that's coming up for a vote in the Senate. That's the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, because that's a horrible, horrible bill that's going to have just a horrible impact on the Black, brown, and other communities, including on women. Because in that SAVE Act, and I'll just give you this piece, I'll end on it. In the SAVE Act, what happens is that, when you go to vote, your name has to match what they want to what they want you to have is either your passport or something to prove that you're a U.S. citizen, like your birth certificate. And so if your wife or your spouse has changed their name because they've gotten married, their birth certificate isn't going to match, and so they wouldn't accept it nor allow them to vote. Those are big major concerns. So we've got to be certain that, and we encourage everyone to call 202-224-3121 and tell the senators to vote against the SAVE Act that's out there. We've got to do that, Santita. We've got to be certain that we're mindful of our status to vote, and that we're taking the actions necessary to protect our vote, and we're doing our regular checkup to be certain that we haven't been removed from the voter rolls in our areas.
Do that regularly. Just go, what did you say, vote.org? Find out.
Vote.org, yes.
Do that, continue to do that, because now, like in Texas, I understand, Representative Reynolds, you do not have same-day on-site voter registration.
Nope, you do not. Once that cutoff is, if you don't make that cutoff, then you're going to have to sit it out, and that would be a crying shame.
And let me tell you something. While we are watching these deployments that are coming, the Pentagon told you, the memo has been written. They are coming because you are going to want to demonstrate when you see that your Social Security check or your mom and daddy's Social Security check does not get them from payday to Monday. When your Medicare or Medicaid is cut. Let me tell you, these times are coming. So you need to get registered to vote. And you should not go to vote by yourself. You need to go in bunches. Because when you go with some people, you will feel empowered as people, as a community. Everybody needs to meet and vote together. There's power, there's strength in numbers. And that's what we need to do. But we're going to continue to have these kinds of discussions because we want you. And you know what, you reminded me, Shapiro, what we've got to do. I'd like you to come back, Representative Reynolds and Darrell Jones, and talk to us about some of the big cases that are coming down the pike that we need to be mindful of. Because there's a lot that's going on behind the scenes, and we should not get caught flat-footed. Like if we'd understood Project 2025, and if we'd really understood beyond Project 2025, which was enacted really in 2022, you need to understand that what's happening with the deployment of these troops, this was already in the hopper. They've been testing this out for a minute, everybody. So now here we are. But you cannot be intimidated. Now's the time for you to be empowered. And you need to get your neighbors, get registered to vote. You need to demonstrate. The data shows that when Americans get out in the streets and protest and demonstrate nonviolently, when we nonviolently resist, we change everything. We change everything, and we're going to have to go into our churches, our sororities, and our fraternities, all of our clubs, our block clubs, and show people how to demonstrate, how you should not react to people who come into your march and try to disrupt it. We have to be disciplined. We've been down this road before, and we can make it out, and we can become a more perfect union, but that's on us. Nobody's going to make this happen for us. We're the ones who have to make this happen. Check out Attorney Barbara Arnwine and Attorney Darrell Jones on WOLDC. That's right. WOLDC's great old talk radio station, Black talk radio station. I love it. Love it. We used to Listen to Moon Man Bacote when I was in college on WOL. You know what I'm talking about. Moon Man. I'm going all the way back to the 80s. Ow. Everybody, I hope, bless his heart. Yes. And of course, Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds. Everybody, please like and share the show. Meet me on Blue Sky, santitajackson.bsky.social, santitajackson.bsky.social. Meet me on, what is it, on Instagram, Santita Jackson IG. Santita Jackson IG. We're going to start streaming there as we are streaming on X at Santita J and Santita Jackson and friends. That's where I can receive friendships. And to all my friends on TikTok, please forgive me. I didn't realize that, like I'm gonna have to start checking my messages because I'm getting DM'd like crazy. And so please forgive me to someone said you're ignoring me. I want him to know I'm not ignoring you. I just don't check these DMs. I didn't really think people did that. So excuse me, really. I really didn't. I'm a little, I'm a little new to all of this. I mean, because you all ask like a lot of really personal questions. I'm not mad at you, but I'm not ready for that. But here we go, everybody. I am Santita Jackson, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Much love to you, everybody. God bless.